I wanted to welcome everybody. I'm Becky Binder with CoreNet Global, and we're just so pleased that you will be speaking at the summit. We've put together a great webinar today with Stephanie Davies, who will be leading this webinar on delivering exceptional presentations. And I just wanted to thank Stephanie for all that she's done to work with us and put this together for all of us. This webinar is being recorded. It will be put on demand, so others who aren't here today can be able to take advantage of the resources that we're working on. So let me just take a minute to tell you about Stephanie. She's a unique individual. In her previous life, she spent a lot of time in smoky, windowless rooms in front of rowdy crowds because she was and is a comedian. She went on to become the founder and CEO of Laughology and is now one of the UK's leading voices in happiness and engagement in organizations. Isn't that a nice thing to be able to say? Happiness and engagement. I love that. Her experience as an award-winning comedian and her knowledge and expertise of psychology and business sense makes her one of the most sought-after speakers on the circuit. Right. She's really got that unique combination of being the comedian, doing lots of corporate training, working with lots of groups of people from businesses to schools. You're in the hands of with a really talented facilitator and leader. And all those things rolled up together, I think she just brings very unique perspectives for working with audiences, the things that she's learned as being a comedian, some of the audience control skills, and just really practical and fun ideas that you can use to make your presentations at the summit or any place else where you're speaking to be more successful. So thank you again, Stephanie. Thanks to all of you who are participating today. And at this point, we'll hand it over to you, Stephanie.
So thank you so much, Becky, for that wonderful built-up introduction. So pressure is now on to perform. So hello, everybody, wherever you are and joining in. I'm standing in my office here in the UK. It's a little bit cloudy today, so I hope wherever you are, the sun is shining, and really lovely to be speaking to you from the other side of the world. So, as Becky said, my name is Stephanie Davies. I'm the founder and director of a company called Laughology, passionate about humour and happiness in workplaces, but also in presentations that we bring a little bit more of ourselves and the human touch to how we present, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So that's me there doing my thing. And just to give you a little bit more background, like Becky said, I did 10 years doing stand-up comedy. So for me, bringing that natural element of humour and yourself into presentations is really important. And when I talk about comedy and humour, what I'm not doing is talking about telling jokes, because I think sometimes they can go quite wrong. So what we are talking about is how we bring that in naturally. And that's what I'm going to cover today, along with lots of other things, and give you some real top tips to take away. So we're just going to open a poll now as well, because what I'd really like to get from you today is an understanding from you about what are the things that help you or what are the things that hinder you. And I want to try and make this as interactive as possible. So you tell me what are the things that perhaps you feel are some of the biggest challenges when presenting. So you should see a poll that's opened there either now or just in a few seconds. And what I really want to know is, what is the biggest challenge for you when presenting? Is it sticking to time? Is it nerves? Is it getting your message across in a fun, engaging way? Or is it remembering information? And all these things are really important for when presenting, and I'm going to cover some of these things today. So we will get through them as we go through, and then we'll come back to the polls to really understand what your thoughts were behind that as well. So let's look, first of all, at storytelling and the importance of emotions in stories. So when we tell a story, the reason why a story really works is because it brings the audience member along with them. And in the first instance, we're engaging with people in emotions when we tell a story. And the reason why we're engaging with them in emotions is because when we tell a story, we're more likely to tell it in a local way, where we don't use big language, in a way that is simpler for the audience to follow. So storytelling is a really good way to get a message across. And in storytelling, I would always say, talk about yourself. So we're going to look a little bit more at storytelling in this part of the presentation. And what storytelling does is it helps us process information in quite a unique way. So we present the situation, we get people to think about it based on beliefs, values, or memories, and they feel connected to that story, and then they're more likely to remember that story and take action as well. So how we process information is generally about our emotions and how we feel. And so what we need to do when we very first come on stage, before we do anything else, is we really need to get that audience emotionally engaged in what we're talking about. And there's lots of different ways that we can do that. So often when I come on stage, the first thing I do, and I did it with you guys just before, is I ask open and interactive questions. And that not only relaxes the audience, but it will relax you as well. And what you can do with this is you can have a little bit of fun with the audience. So you can ask questions at the start to introduce a story, if you like. So I might say, okay, how many of you in this room have ever got into a taxi not really knowing where you're going? And I might ask people to put their hands. Let's see a show of hands. So immediately you're asking them to do something, and it's an action in relation to what you're talking about. So you've engaged them physically as well as mentally. And when we ask a question, people cannot help but answer that question in their minds. But there's some really lovely techniques that we can do. We can get an audience to stand up. When we first come on stage, introduce yourself, say something a little bit about yourself that's unique to you, that's something a little bit different, not corporate-y, not worky, but something about you, maybe where you've come from that day or something like that, because immediately then the audience is starting to build a picture about who you are. The other thing that we can do when we ask questions is we can say to the audience, okay, I'm going to ask you to stand up for me. And so they might, and hopefully we'll all stand up. And what I sometimes do is I might say, I'm going to ask you a question. And for those of you who agree, you can stay standing. For those of you who disagree, you might sit down. For those of you who aren't sure, you can hover. And you can have a little bit of fun with people and ask them to practice standing up, sitting down, or even hovering, and just have a little interaction with people about how they hover. So you might ask a question first out in relation to your presentation. It might be a question where you say to them, okay, let me know, do you think, and there's your question, and do you agree, disagree, or not sure? And then you have the opportunity to engage the audience, because the ones who are standing, you might go to them and say, okay, why is it that you agree? Why are you standing? And then go to an opposing person. So what is it? Why are you sitting down? Why do you disagree with that? And so it just gives you that interactive opener that allows you to calm down when you're on stage, but also the audience can have a little bit of fun. And there's lots of things that you can do within that. So you might also split the audience in half and have some group interaction when you first come in. So you might say to one group, stamp your feet. You might say to another group, clap your hands. And then you might say, let's put that together and talk about that's the kind of energy that we want today. Or you can do different things with splitting the audience. Ask who is it that we've got here? Where are people from today? And do a shout out. Because what that does is that also allows you to interact with the audience and immediately get them on side as well. So I'm looking for here the poll results, but as in all live interactions. Sometimes we might have to wait a little bit longer for these. So what I also wanted to ask you...
It's Becky, sorry.
Hello, Becky. Hey.
Hi. If you hand back the control to Angelina, she can run the poll.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hand back the control. So let me go to the top here. So, okay, there we go. I've just handed back. So we're just going to run that first poll. Have you got that now, ladies? Just a second. This is presentations live, folks. This is when.
Yeah, I do not see it yet. I'm sorry.
It's okay. That's okay. Let's see if we can hand that back. We are. So. Okay. That should be going back, but for some reason.
I think I have it. Just a moment.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we'll just wait for that to happen with the poll there. I can see that it's gone back. But just to remind you of what that poll was, what we were looking for, and it should be coming up with you any minute now, it should be what is the largest or challenge that you get when presenting? Is it sticking to time? Is it nerves? Is it getting your message across in an engagement way? Is it remembering information? And what we should have had on there is it technology as well? That should have been one that we put on there, but it's not. But it is one of those things that can get in the way sometimes. And even though we had a run through, that's just what happens when it's live. So just have a little look at that poll there, and if you can fill that in. So what we've just talked about is that idea of interacting with the audience, and this is what we're doing now. Even though we're doing it virtually, there are still ways that you can interact with your audience in lots of different ways. And this is a really good way to do it. And you might even, in your audience, you might ask a question, and what you might do is you might ask people to hold up their hands to an A, B, C, or D, or you might even put things under the chairs, an A, B, C, or D, and ask them to have a chat to the person or people next to them and pull out and hold up an A, a B, a C, or a D. And sometimes I do it in colours as well. And so that helps us to really understand where an audience is coming from. And also, if we do that at the very start of a session, then it means that we can build some of that stuff into a session as well. So thinking at the very, very beginning, what is it that you want your audience to get out of the session? And I always talk about what is it that you want your audience to go away and think and feel and do. So we've got some results there, so thanks ever so much everyone for filling that in. And we've got quite similar results with the sticking to time is one of the biggest things, and getting your message across in an engaging way. And so we will talk about massively today about getting your message across in an engaging way, and hopefully I've covered some of that already. And I will talk to you very briefly about sticking to time, because that is an important thing, and rehearsing something is always important for that, so going through it. And what I would always say is, if you go through your presentation and say your presentation is meant to be 20 minutes and it's only 10 minutes long when you go through it, don't worry, because actually with all your interactions you'll probably increase it to 20 minutes. And there's a rule in comedy that you're always told, and that rule is, if you're doing well, get off. If you're not doing well, get off. And so it's about remembering those things. Okay, let's take back control there. I've got control. So the second poll that I really would like you to think about, and we're going to pop this up and we'll give you time to fill this in, is, what do you think about presence and charisma? Are we born with presence and charisma, or do you think we can learn to be charismatic and have presence? So you should see a poll coming up on there. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to pass back the controls again, so you should have them. And then we can go forward with that presence. Do you think we are born with presence and charisma, or can we learn to be charismatic and to have presence? Now, if you go away from this presentation today, there's a couple of things that you can look at that I would recommend you having a look at. There's a YouTube clip of Sheryl Sandberg, especially when she is doing a Harvard University talk for women. And look at the way she very first walks on stage. Go onto YouTube after this and look at that Sheryl Sandberg clip, and look at when she very first walks onto stage, how charismatic she is, how she creates that presence. And look at what she does in terms of that audience interaction that we were talking about before. So my question to you is, when you very first walk on stage, what is it that you're going to do? What is it that you're going to do to instantly interact and attract that audience? Because some of that stuff that you do will let the audience know that you're okay, but also build an energy in the room. And our energies is what creates our charisma and our presence. And so this is really worth thinking about, and I think this is really important to think about, because if we understand that we can actually learn to be charismatic and to have presence, and it's about how we are and how we come across, then we can practice those things and we can help ourselves to get better. One of the things I always talk about is the only way to actually get better is to be in front of people. And so one of the things is to be ultra aware of what we call your social intelligence. So be aware when you're in a room of things that you're doing to interact with people, but also observe other people. So I'm delighted to see that the majority of you do believe that we can learn to be charismatic and to have presence. And I'm going to talk very much about how we do that. And part of that is understanding our social intelligence and what social intelligence actually means. So social intelligence is made up of 4 or 5 different things. And it is about tuning in and adapting to others. So looking at your audience and making sure what you're saying is fitting that audience. When I used to do comedy, one of the most important things was knowing who your audience were beforehand. So doing a little bit of research. I know when I was a comedian, if I went up north and in the north of England and did a gig there, and then I went down south, I'd have to change my material. Also, if I went into a room where there was a certain club where I played to a certain people, i.e. it might be young people or students, I would have to adapt my material if I was playing to an older audience. So having that research, who is your audience? What kind of stuff would they like? And we have got lots of technology now to be able to understand that a little bit better and to understand who signed up to your event. You've got LinkedIn, so a bit of research to understand what it is. And you can even send out questionnaires beforehand. SurveyMonkey is a great way to do that. Effective listening and conversational skills, so interacting with your audience and really hearing what they've said. Often I'll repeat a question back to the audience that someone might have asked me, because that gives me twofold. It gives me a little bit of time to think, but also what it does is it allows the rest of the audience to hear that question if they haven't had the mic. And also you can frame it in a way, so you might say, am I right that I've just heard you say? So it's making sure that you've heard the question right. Impression management. So this is that first 5 or 10 seconds when you walked on stage that we were talking about. That how will you be perceived? And that relaxing stuff that we were saying about how can you interact with the audience? And how are you aware of rules and awareness in that room and social efficiency? Like I said, doing a little bit of research beforehand. And not only is it about what we do in terms of how we think about the situation in our social intelligence and how we can affect it in how we react and respond in terms of creating that presence. It's also about how we move and how people pick up on micro and macro expressions. I call these things your good humour ingredients. And what it might be worth doing is when you have some time, just when you're interacting with someone that you're enjoying interacting with and telling a fun story, think about what you're doing with your facial expressions, with your body language, with your voice and tone and pitch and the types of words you're doing. And the reason why I call these things your good humour ingredients is because it's like baking a cake. If I bake a cake and I gave that cake over to you and you said to me, that's a lovely cake, what do you put in it? And I said, I don't know, I just hope it turns out okay. You'd never be able to get that same cake again. However, if I wrote down the ingredients, the chances are I could replicate that feeling, that energy that I have, and people would pick up on that. But the other part that's really lovely is this helps calm us down, because there's a top part of the brain called the supplementary motor, and that records and memorizes how we behave and links it to emotions. So when we interact and behave in a way like we might when we're upbeat and happy or relaxed, when we do those things, it tells our brain that we are upbeat and happy and relaxed and actually sends out that emotional response, those neurotransmitters, and so we will feel better. There's some lovely piece of research on this from a brilliant lady at Harvard University called Amy Cuddy, and she talks about power posing. And if you're somewhere now where you can do this, if you're in a workplace, then you might not be able to, but if you're listening to this with other people or even by yourself, you can try this now. So power posing is about getting yourself in a position where you feel confident. So you can stand up, have your feet just hip width apart, and just put your shoulders back. And I always say clench your buttocks, because actually if you clench your buttocks, you can't help but feel in control and smile sometimes. And if we just hold that position with shoulders back, head up, feet hip width apart, just for maybe 10 seconds, we start to feel calm and in control. And it actually boosts a small amount of testosterone in the brain, which is a calming tool if we don't have too much, if we just have a little boost. It's called power posing. Now, it's about doing it in a way that doesn't look awkward, but if you are a little bit nervous, getting yourself on that stage and making sure that you feel okay, then people will pick up on that. And that's how presence and charisma is created, knowing what you do well, being able to have a laugh with people, being able to create an energy in the room that will create positive social interactions by interacting with people, like I said, and being able to look at life in a different way and tell stories in that way. So when we talk about laughter and humour, it's not about telling jokes, it's about how we make people feel. And a big part of that is storytelling. So telling a good story should have all these things in it. And I'm just going to tell you a quick story now, a very, very quick one, just to give you an example of how a good story might be told. So many years ago, I was travelling from Liverpool, where I used to live, in the north of England, to the south of England, to London. And I don't know if you ever do this, but I certainly do. Do you keep your information of where you're going in your phone? And if you do you always put the full information in there? So I travelled this particular day and I looked at my phone, and I'm a little bit lazy sometimes when it comes to checking up on information, because I have a wonderful team who put that information in my diary for me, so I knew it was there. And so when I got off the train, I looked in my diary and I saw this address, and it said the Clock House Hotel. So I jumped in the cab that was just outside of the train station, and I said to him, "Can you take me to this address?" And he looked at me, and then he said, I know where that is. So off we went. We drove down this road, and we got outside this beautiful house. It was like an old country-style house. And there was beautiful big gates in front of the house, and they opened very, very slowly. And so I walked down the driveway after getting out the cab, and just as I was about to go in the house, a lady come out, and she went, "Can I help you?" And I went, "Yes, I'm staying here this evening." And she looked at me a little bit funny. She said, "No, you're not. This is my home." To which point I replied, "But I've booked," and showed her my phone, as if that was going to make a difference and she was going to invite me into her home. But anyway, she looked at me. She must have seen the fear on my face, and she did invite me in. She was a lovely lady, and she said, "I know what's gone wrong." She said, "We used to be a bed and breakfast, but what you're looking for is the Clock House by the River Hotel. We used to be the Clock House B&B. Come in, I'll make you a cup of tea. You can call a cab and you can go there." So I was sitting in the lounge, and the lady was in the kitchen making a cup of tea for me. And I went onto my phone, Googled the address, got the number, and called the number. And the lady answered and said, and I said, as quickly as she answered, she said, "Hello, my name's Stephanie Davis. I'm staying with you this evening, and I'm sorry I've made a mistake. I've come to the wrong place." And just as I was about to go into the conversation, the lady said, "Oh, can I stop you there?" And she walked in on the phone. She said, "You've called me, dear. I was in the kitchen." And I called her because the address was still on Google and the number. And so that what must have happened with my team. Anyway, it was all embarrassing. We had a laugh about it. And in the end, she called me a cab, and I got to the right place in the end. But it just shows you how we should check up on things ourselves. Now, if you think of how I built that story, we had a beginning, middle, and end. I set out the characters. I was really descriptive and emotive in the words that I used. I used language that was simple, like enormous gates or beautiful big house. So I used really simple words. And the key is simple language. We actually disengage people when we use big words. So the key is simple language. And when you use humour, you should make it about yourself and observational. So you can have the setup like I did. You can have the little joke in the middle, which is what I did. So the setup was me arriving at the house. The joke was when I tried to walk into the woman's house, and the twist was when she answered the phone. And that's a nice little formula for stories. So if you have a story, it might fit into that. If it doesn't, don't worry. But it's a nice formula to say how humour might work. And tell stories that are personal to you, that will connect with your audience and tell the audience about you. And use language at the start like I did. So open questions, have you ever, do you remember, how many of you? Because we cannot help but answer questions in our heads, even when those questions are just rhetorical. And use language that is fun, but also be very aware of your language and how it will engage people in the context of the situation. And if you are using slides, like a slide like this, where you're putting a graph up, tell the story behind the graph. Use the words to paint a picture, because actually that will make people remember more. Otherwise, it is just a series of numbers. But what is the story behind those numbers? How did you get there? What is the actual meaning of that for an individual? Can you relate it to an individual? And that's when people get emotionally involved. And so what I would always say is think about what's your main message. And like I said, what do you want your audience to think, feel, and do during and after? That's where you need to start. You need to start with that understanding. And there's simple things that you can use in a story to influence and persuade. Simple words that I've put up on the screen. I'm not going to go through them all, but when you personalize stuff, if you have a name of someone in the audience that you've got from the very beginning, from that interaction, you might use them throughout because it brings it back again to the audience. I also just want to point out number 5 there, the word because. Because is an important one because it gives us a why you're saying something, and the brain does need a why. And so when we're explaining information, because is a lovely word, because it gives a good understanding of why we're talking about that message. There's also what I call the proof persuasion model. If you want to outline and put a clear message across about why something you are doing should happen. And the call to action is an important part of that. And so it's not just about speaking all the time. A lot of it should be about listening to what people are saying and observing the audience constantly. Don't just get carried away with presenting what you're presenting and getting through it. Interact with that audience, observe what's going on, and then you will get to a point where you feel more connected and they feel more connected as well. And it's about listening well. So you might be doing a big presentation, in which case you might need to capture questions along the way or at the end. And it might be that you capture them along the way on a flip chart. If you're in a smaller presentation or a meeting, it might be that you use something that I use as a tool called in-out listening. And this is a lovely but simple tool. Because I'm such a person that talks a lot, you've probably noticed that, and also my brain is all over the place. If I'm in a meeting, sometimes I need to align my brain with that meeting. So I'll draw a middle bit down the page, and in one side I'll have all the stuff that is coming in from that meeting. So all the notes that I need to take from that meeting. And then I'll put in the out bit, those little bits that fire into your brain that keep coming in to remind you to do something. But what the lovely thing is that when we put it in that out box there, the brain feels as if it's dealt with it and doesn't stop pinging it in. So once you write it down, the brain has dealt with it and it knows you can go back to concentrate on the meeting. So it's just a little top tip there. So to start that part of the presentation, and we've still got a little bit more to do, how do we get creative? There's lots of ideas there. We can use numbers if we need to present numbers and put them on a lottery ticket. Can you hide envelopes under seats and stick them with answers on or with information, vital information? Can we create positive debate through standing and sitting and getting people physical? If you need to set out some guidelines at the beginning, then do that. And be spontaneous. Don't be afraid of doing something that's risky or even making a mistake. It just makes you look more human when you're presenting. So I want to talk about nerves because that's one of the biggest things that you talked about that is a challenge. So what happens when we get nervous? So we have a perceived threat, which might be the presentation. That sends a message to the emotional brain. Our emotional brain says, oh, that feels challenging, and starts to send adrenaline to the rest of the body, down the spinal cord. You get a wobbly voice, you might get butterflies, which is then sending a message back up to the brain to say there is a real threat because I feel like this, my body's reacting. So what we need to learn to do is take the emotional brain back over. We need to learn to control it with the front part of our brain, our thinking part of the brain. And you can have a mantra to do that. It might be that you challenge back those automatic negative thoughts. You challenge back some of those negative dialogue that's in your brain. I had a mantra when I used to go on the comedy circuit that I would say over and over to myself before I go on, that would just make me calm and feel better. And then I'd go on and I'd interact with the audience, and then my brain would calm down. Another thing that will help us with nerves is being able to remember. And I know that was one of the things that we talked about earlier. So I just want to show you a really cool memory trick. And it's not that we don't have a good memory, we just don't use our memory in the best way. So what you'll see on the left-hand side here, I've just created 1 to 10 of random objects. And they are just random objects that I looked around my office and put down on the paper. And then on the right-hand side, I've created a body with numbers. And you'll see that 1 is the head, 2 is the ear, 3 is the nose, 4 is the mouth, 5 is the shoulder, 6 is the right hand, 7 is the left hand, number 8 is the belly, number 9 is our knees, and number 10 are our feet. And what we need to do is we link the words to the different parts of our body. It's called memory linking, and it's a really easy way to learn. So just join in with me now if you can. Again, stand up if you're in a place where you can, and get yourself on your feet. And I'm going to ask you to think about having a fish on your head. Really visualize that fish. What's it doing there? Is it flopping about? Have you got to hold your head in a certain way to keep it there? Think about number 2, a pen in your ear. And what's going on with that pen in your ear? Are you sticking it in to be able to scratch your ear? Why is it there? Is it in deep? Is it in a little bit? Are you drawing in your ear? Number 3, a tissue on your nose. So why is there a tissue there? It might be that you're using it to blow your nose. So there's a tissue on your nose. Number 4, there's a phone in your mouth. Really think about, why is that phone in your mouth? Well, it might be because your hands are full, so you've got to hold the phone in your mouth. Or it might be that it's a new technology that just links the phone to your mouth, so you never have to pick up your phone and answer it again. So number 5, on your shoulder, there's a book on your shoulder. Think about why you've got a book on your shoulder. Is it that you're really passionate about intelligence and reading, and so you just have a book on your shoulder ready to flip and read whenever you like? Number 6, in your right hand is a stapler. How is that stapler attached to your hand? Is it actually stapled on? And in which case, is that a little bit sore? Is it stapled on your finger? Number 7, in your left hand is a tea bag. What's the tea bag doing now? Is it squidgy? Is it wet? Is it dry? When you squeeze it in your hand, imagine squeezing it and all the tea running around your hand. Number 8, in your tummy is an ice pop. Why is that ice pop there? It might be that it's a really hot day and that's cooling your tummy down. Really imagine that ice pop hopefully in your tummy, or it might be that you've just sat it on top of your belly just to cool yourself down. Number 9, in between your knees are your underpants. So imagine your underpants just there between. Why are they there just by your knees? Is it that you haven't had time to pull them up all the way today? Or is it that they're just sitting there ready because it's a really hot day? Number 10, you're standing on a calculator. What is it? Why is it that is it a big calculator that you're standing on, a super-sized calculator that you can dance around to put the numbers in? If you can, turn around from your screen now so you're not looking at those 10 words, and just join in with me. Think about, I am turned around from my screen now because I'm actually doing this even though you can't see me. So on your head, can you remember what's on your head flopping about there? It's a fish. Can you remember what's in your ear, perhaps itching around? It's a pen. Can you remember what's on your nose? You used to blow your nose. It's a tissue. In your mouth, what was there? It was a phone. On your shoulder, can you remember what was there because you were intelligent? It was a book. In your right hand, can you remember what was hurting your right hand because it was stuck there? A stapler. In your left hand, what did you squidge and it went all over you? It was a tea bag. In your belly, what was there keeping you nice and cool? An ice pop. And then on your knees, what did you have just hanging around your knees? That's right, it's your underpants. And what were you standing and dancing around on? Can you remember? It was a calculator. Well done if you managed to remember all them. That is called link learning. Those parts of the body aren't going away. So if we link our memory to something that's static, that's always there, we're going to create a structure that we will remember. It's not that we have a poor memory, we just remember in a poor way. So how can you create a structure? It might be on your fingers, it might be using your body, but what I would strongly recommend is you just use up to 10 words to remember your presentation, and then it'll come across more naturally as well. So how can we influence more? So don't underestimate the power of smiling. It's one of the most important things, and being natural and being you. If you saw me standing here now, you would see that I'm standing up and I'm moving and using my arms. And I'm even smiling when I talk because I know that that makes a difference. Reciprocation as well, so doing something for people. So I give out prizes in my presentations because it gets people excited, and also I've given something, so they give something back. When we talk about something being perhaps nearly at the end, people take note when it's scarce. Someone introducing us in a lovely way gives us, the audience, a sense of authority. But also being consistent throughout the presentation. So if you start with high energy, then you dip. The audience are going to lose faith. If you start with high energy and keep it there, that's really important. Likability is important, and also getting all the audience on your side, because if they all are, you have consensus, so people are more likely to go with it. So just to sum up, some do's and don'ts around data and graphs. So like I said before, we're going to put a graph up. We need to make it very visual. I often see people putting up graphs like this. Absolutely pointless. Don't do it. If you really want to do something like this, do it as a handout. But I always say, if people can't read it, if people won't remember it, what's the point of that slide? It should be about storytelling. So we're just going to end also on a poll now. So we're going to put up another poll. And I'd just like to summarize. When you end, you should summarize. So clarify and contrast with the audience of what you've said. So it might be summarizing what you've said. So in this case, we've gone through storytelling and humor, which should always be directed at yourself. And storytelling should be about something that is unique to you. We've also talked about presence and how you can create presence, and also about when you first walk on stage, what's the one thing that you're going to do, or two things that you're going to do to instantly interact with that audience and calm them down and create presence, thinking about how you stand. And also, how are you going to interact with the audience, really listen to them, and have fun with them in a creative way. Don't be frightened of engaging your audience in a creative way. And what are you going to do in terms of trying out a new memory technique? So tell us a little bit of one thing you will take away and practice. Is it storytelling? Is it a new way to interact with your audience? Or is it going to be those memory techniques? What is it that you're going to do? Let us know. And then always end on a takeaway. So you're giving something to the audience. And it might just be a summary of, this is what I'm going to give you. It might be a list that you end with. It might be something tangible, like a printout that you give them to take away. But what is it that you want them and they're going to take away? And like I said, it might just be something non-tangible, or it might be something tangible. So, we've got a real clean sweep across the board, but I'm delighted that a lot of you are going to take away storytelling, a new way to interact, and some memory techniques there as well. So I really just want to give you one last thing to take away. So hopefully we'll just go on to the next page any minute now. Brilliant. So just to sum up, make sure that you action plan. What is it that you want your audience to take away? What will you do to improve your presentation? Remember, who is your audience? And most importantly, how do you want your audience to feel after the event? How will you engage them? Think of that first, and you'll always end with an engaging and brilliant, entertaining presentation. Thank you so much for staying with us and interacting with us. And also thank you for staying with us even on the technical glimpse. And that's going to be one of my takeaways, is up my technology skills. So thank you ever so much.
Does anyone have any questions for Stephanie? If not, then thank you, everyone. Thank you, Stephanie, and I look forward to seeing you, everyone at the summit.
Thank you very much. Enjoy your presentation.
Thank you, Steph. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.